Okay, cool. I think we're pretty much ready. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone, and happy Sunday / I guess Monday, depending on where you are. I hope you've had a wonderful time at Talks and Learn so far. Even though I'm not in Boston, this used to be one of my favorite events that I would go to every year. So my name is Sarah Spiers, and I am the producer of Studio Dry Dock, which is a global indie studio that's based technically everywhere around the world, although we do have a couple of people in the New England area. And I'm also the lead program manager of the IGDA Foundation, where we do a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff. And with me today is Catherine.
Sarah, you get to start?
Yes.
Yeah, first I would like to apologize if I cut in and out because it looks like I'm getting some connection issues. I am in a hotel right now. But yeah, hi, I'm Catherine. I'm the community and marketing manager at Armor Game Studios. You probably know our main site, the Flash game site. So I help indie developers grow and develop communities for their games. I originally studied game art in college. I'll go into that a bit more later. But yeah, that's more or less about me. I know a lot about Neopets. I feel obligated to bring that up every time I introduce myself somewhere.
It's like a character trait at this point. Catherine's given, I think, multiple talks and Twitter threads, and just in general.
Sarah, Neopets. You look frozen. Is that me?
That's you. Oh no, that's okay. Well, while Catherine figures it out, I will speak.
Okay, I'm try doing this audio only because I don't know if it's going to work with video for me.
Okay, and if it becomes really bad, I can turn my video off too. Everyone has seen my face multiple times.
You can see my face on Twitter.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so Catherine,
yeah.
What did you, so you're a community manager. What did you originally want to do?
So I don't know if this came through in my intro, but I originally studied game art. So what I wanted to do, I still don't actually know what I was trying to do at the time. I think I was spending a lot of time trying to figure out what kind of thing in art I want to do. Mm-hmm. I think honestly, like even though I studied game art, the skills that I was getting and most interested in kind of fit more with like TV animation. But I don't know if I ever really figured that out. But I studied game art in college. I graduated from RPI in 2017. And then pretty immediately afterwards, I started pivoting into community management. What about you, Sarah?
Oh gosh. So I feel like I do the very traditional, like went into production, but was originally going to be a writer. So I know a bunch of producers who've done that. And I feel like we all need to get together and have like a little writing club. But yeah, I wanted to be a writer. I actually really wanted to be a novelist and write like teen, like queer dramas. Like that was the genre, the specific niche I wanted to be in. And I was really excited by just like exploring the emotions of like what you're, who you are when you're growing up and whatnot. And so I went to Emerson College here in Boston to figure that out. They have a writing, literature, and publishing program. And I very quickly learned that it just wasn't clicking for me. And I actually met a friend in like a different dorm, and she brought her friend who was really into games. And that friend, Eleanor, asked me, Sarah, why don't you write for games? Because you can do a lot with games. And then I thought, oh my gosh, yes. And I essentially tried to pursue that through college. I tried and failed to make my own major. And then just did it anyway and wound up graduating with a degree in just general media production. And then through internships, essentially became a producer instead. Not as exciting, but still just an interesting path, I suppose. So, yeah. So Catherine, I think whenever I chat with people about like what they want to do, I always want to know, what was that moment that made you realize? So in this case, what was that moment that made you realize community management was for you?
It's interesting because I feel like during school, like especially like college game development programs tend to only focus on like design, art, and programming. I think we've talked about this a bunch of times together.
Right. Okay, so while she refreshes, I'll tell a little bit. So and she'll probably correct me. I might get some details wrong. So if I remember correctly, Catherine went into RPI as art, and I think that she had many moments where.
Oh, hello.
Oh, there you go. I was about to tell your story. So we heard that
I'm probably going to be refreshing a lot then because it's like my third time.
I know.
My internet's really bad here.
Right.
Yeah. So I was starting to. I don't know how much got through before I disconnected. Yeah, I'll just start from the beginning. So I originally because college game development programs tend to be more focused on like art programming and design. They don't really talk about a lot of the other roles in the industry. So it wasn't something I was introduced through school. It was kind of more, I was introduced to it slowly over time while getting involved with online communities across like various gaming spaces. But I don't think I really thought about it more seriously until I was visiting you, actually, not too long after I graduated. I remember going to hang out with you in Boston, and then I was just kind of like, I don't know, probably not art production. And you were like, no. And then I was like, wait, community management? And then you were like, wait, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I don't know, community management seems cool. And then like I started to like work on my skill set a little bit so that I could transition into CM a bit more seriously as work. And then I think the big deciding factor was, I've definitely told you this before, like GDC 2018, I was going for the first time and I had to put something on my business cards. And I was like, do I put art? Do I put community management? And I had to pick one. And I'm like, I don't know, community management feels like the more sustainable thing for me in the long run in terms of like the things I wanted from my career and the stuff I was interested in doing and stuff.
That makes sense. So I do have a follow-up question for you. So when you were kind of making that weird, like, I don't know if this is what I want to do, was there like a gut feeling you had as you were pursuing art? Was there like a moment that you just looked around and you're like, no, I don't have like the same kind of passions as other artists? Like, what was kind of that first indicator for you?
I think a little bit burnout, honestly. I definitely noticed that when I stopped doing art professionally, or trying to do it professionally rather, I started to like it a lot more as a career path for me personally. So like I think that was the indicator that it was definitely the right decision, but I think it was just kind of like a slow realization over time. It's like when you grow up like doing art and stuff, like a very common experience is that you're kind of known as the art person. So it gets really difficult to distance yourself from that. And like, even when I was like switching out of art professionally, it was still kind of hard to do that. But I think like once I was able to start making the distinction between the me that enjoys doing art and the me that wants to actually do something else professionally was like pretty pivotal to me, I think.
That makes sense.
Yeah. What about you, Sarah? What got you thinking about your career change?
So we're in Boston, so actually people will know what I'm talking about. So I actually went through the Master Summer Innovation Program. I went through it with Catherine. For the record, we were on separate teams. And there's a point in that program, I don't know if that's still there anymore, but there's a point in that program where Monty, who's one of the directors there, will ask you to put down your preference of like what role you want to have, essentially. And I think like a team preference. I don't know if this happens anymore. And and one of the questions I believe on there was like, do you want to be a producer? And I was like, I don't know. And I really didn't want to for whatever reason. I remember talking to my roommate about it, and I called a couple of friends and was like, I don't know if I want to be a producer. And I think I was just really against it because I think that that's what I wanted, what I thought people wanted me to do. But I put down yes anyway. And then Monty chose me as producer, and that was kind of it. I realized that that was actually something I was interested in. And then when I left that program and went back to like my internship job thing, I told them, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. And they threw me into those roles. And I realized that this is what I'd been trying to do for a very long time. I did a lot of organizational development-y stuff in my university. All of the stuff I did on the side was very organization-based. I was really great at helping people plan things. And I was just so against it for so long. And I don't really know why. Sure, it was like some internalized something. But that's really it. And then I realized I loved it. And then now, I'll sit there and I'll be like, hey, let's plan something. And you're like, Sarah, we don't have time. And I'm like, but we could. And so, yeah.
Produce your brain.
I know. I like keep trying to get Catherine. I'm like, let's do a Twitch conference. And she's like, no, Sarah. So I think
with what time, Sarah?
I know.
You have less time than me. I don't know how you do it.
I don't. Yeah, y'all. I'm not a great example of work-life balance. But yeah, that was, I think, that moment. It was, I wanted to be a writer, but I couldn't really get behind it. I felt kind of alienated by my peers who, to be fair, I love them dearly. We're very much stereotypes at the time. We would like sit around and quiet and be very sad and write. And that was what we thought the artist experience was. And I just wasn't about that. And to their credit, they're not like that anymore. But production, I think, was more my style because I was really into seeing like results and tracking those results. And it was very hard as a writer when you're going into those writing critiques and people are like, I just don't feel like I'm vibing with your character. Like, you can't argue with the spreadsheet. So, or I guess you could, but it's different. You can't. So that was kind of that moment for me. And I have Monty to thank. I don't know if he knows that, but I'm sure someone will say something to him at some point. So, yeah. But anyway, you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I wanted to touch on it. So you don't do art professionally, but you do art on the side. So, like, how do you engage, I guess, with that art? Is it more of a hobby? Do you ever do commissions? Like, what does that look like for you now?
I mean, for me now, it's mostly just me drawing my D&D characters.
Hey, that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't do it as much as I used to, but I definitely enjoy it a lot more than I used to because I'm able to do it more at my own pace, kind of drawing whatever I want. So it's still like a really fun hobby for me, and it's something that I do want to keep engaging with over time. It's fun to have an outlet to, express myself and just kind of get my ideas out on a page and stuff. So that's kind of, I like in the past, I've done like animation collabs and stuff. It's something I want to get back into doing. That was a lot of fun. I used to do like 2D animation for a few different collabs. What about you, Sarah? How do you continue? Do you like do writing stuff on the side? Is that something you're looking into doing again?
Oh gosh, I really want to. As you pointed out, I'm a busy person. So trying to create more space to do more hobby things. I really do want to get back into writing. And I mean, not just game writing, like novel writing. And I think that just watching all of these like YA books become adapted onto Netflix has really made me want to do that. Not necessarily because I want anything I write to become a Netflix adaptation, but just because I'm seeing all of these really interesting stories either be very tastefully or poorly put onto a wider platform. And I'm like, yeah, this was the thing I wanted to do. So again, I really want to get back into writing. I do a lot of like grant writing and like technical kind of stuff just because of what I do, but I would love to get back into the more kind of like drama scene just because I thought it was really fun and interesting. And at this point, I've met, I feel like, more people than I knew when I was, a teenager, and hopefully have a better life perspective. So maybe we'll create more nuanced characters and stories. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Is there, if you could write anything right now, what would you write?
Oh God, that's a big question. Oh, I'm gonna be so exposed here.
Oh boy,
I like writing trash. I would probably write. I don't know. It's fun. You got to do something that's a guilty pleasure. I mean, I would probably want to go and just write I love this trend of writing fantasy that doesn't take place in medieval Europe, and we're just seeing so much like more diverse character. We're starting to. I don't want to say we're already there because we do have a lot of work to do as an industry, but I think we're starting to see stories that are not just like white people in medieval Europe, and I want to continue exploring that, or like kids in school. Like I want to see what these other, universes or magical lands would look like. And especially for me, like from a queer perspective, what would that look like? And I think Magic for Liars did a really interesting job of that, but just kind of exploring that, or like, does it have to be like magic? I don't know, something with drama, something with adventure. I also would love to write a murder mystery. I read a good time travel murder mystery book the other day. So just kind of getting back into that. I would probably publish it under a pen name, but we'll see.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thanks. So, okay, let me see. I've got a list of questions we're just kind of going through. So let's see. We kind of touched on this. Do you feel like has your skill set as an artist ever come in handy for being a community manager?
Extremely, honestly. I mean, obviously with the my background in art, I know a lot about Photoshop, and I always found myself doing graphic design because I feel like that's a very common experience where if you're an artist, everyone assumes you can do graphic design. So I just ended up doing a lot of it. And that, of course, ends up being really helpful for making social media assets and stuff like that, and resizing things and all that fun stuff. But also, especially in high school and college, I did a decent amount of documentary filmmaking as well, like as a hobby kind of thing, like something I dabbled in. So like I was pretty familiar with Premiere. So that also ended up being really useful because community management's interesting because depending on where you work, you wear a lot of hats, but depending on the kind of studio that you're at, you're going to be doing a lot of different things depending. So because especially since I've mostly worked in indie for the most part, I end up doing a lot of asset creation, like basic like video editing and stuff for not just like social media stuff, but like sometimes internal things, sometimes stuff that we're submitting to festivals and things like that. But also, I also do like asset creation sometimes for the community, for social media and stuff like that. So both of those skill sets ended up being super useful for me at the end of the day. I mean, they were useful for me when I was doing art and stuff in college, but it just ended up being doubly useful going into to now. What about you? Like, what did you take away from trying to do writing that you use now as a producer?
I feel like writing comes in handy with lots of different disciplines, but I think that what's been really a weird skill that I have is don't look at my bio and stuff on websites. I'm really bad at writing my own, but I can write about other people. So I actually work with a lot of the junior devs at my studio at Studio Dry Dock to help them figure out how to write about themselves and how to talk about themselves when they're applying to different programs or fellowships or awards, or like even when they're, applying to jobs because we're all in contracts. So that's really what it's come in handy. And I love using writing for that. It's just so other people can see themselves in a new light and really appreciate how much they've accomplished and how talented they are. And that's one thing that I really love that writing helped me bring to the table. It's not something that I normally talk about in interviews. I think that maybe in your situation, you could probably talk about your art skills kind of contributing to your job. But I guess I never really thought about that in that context. But I think that's how writing has helped me. And I guess also writing emails. At some point, though, you just stop caring and you just start going, hey, do you have a thing? Okay, thanks, bye. You don't sign your name. But
my God.
Production is a fun. I don't want to minimize what producers do, but I think at a certain point we're just like, I'm writing the thing will happen. And being able to write well can help you accomplish those things faster. So question for you again, and I want to I know originally we wanted to ask ourselves, like, what's a piece of advice you would have given yourself, and when you were trying to figure things out. But I kind of want to open it up to what is a piece of advice you would give to someone who's trying to figure out, if they want to change, disciplines or even jobs. Like when they're trying to figure it out,
When you're trying to figure it out, I guess a few different things. From a getting the skills perspective, like reading job listings for the kind of stuff you want to do, seeking out people who do that sort of work and asking them about their experiences to try to gauge if that's a career path for you. But also like having hobbies is really good. Like not just like in games, but out of games too, because that can help kind of steer you in the right direction if you start to understand like what do I find satisfying in life and stuff like that. It's not things that you can just kind of get from being like pigeonholed into games, I guess,
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense. Do you find that your hobbies kind of help you with job stuff? I know that you want to try and not have hobbies serve the work, but
Yeah.
are there any that you do that you feel like have helped you become a better like professional person?
Theater, weirdly
Theater.
enough.
Yeah.
I do community theater, which I don't know if that comes as a surprise to people at this point. I do community theater. So that's been really good for, general confidence and stuff. You have to become really comfortable with being in front of people like constantly when you're on the stage, and it kind of gets you a little bit more comfortable when it comes to things like public speaking, whether that's like in your office doing a presentation or at something like this, So theater has always been a really pivotal one for me in terms of professional skills, even though it's not at all related to what I'm doing now. What about you, Sarah?
Oh gosh. So kind of going back to the first question and then hobbies. So
yeah.
First bit is advice. So the advice that I like to give people, because this is actually something I did because this is what should have indicated that I needed to go into a more organizational related career. So when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I actually sat down and I think I read this book, and I cannot remember the name of the author to save my life, but it is called like Design Your Life or Designing Your Life. And it's like a book/workbook that encourages you to be more aware of what you're doing and what brings you joy and what energizes you, which might not necessarily be the same thing, or what de-energizes you or really makes you miserable, and to really take note of that. And then to start thinking about like all the things you like and create like a job title based off of that. And everything was organizational. I remember one of them was like a YouTube, or like, what was it? I wanted to be like a manager for like a YouTuber and like handle all of the logistical plannings and stuff. This. Oh gosh, I probably could have done it in another life, but I don't know if I would do it now. But yeah, it's just like sitting down and just being aware of what brings you joy in your life and being open to it being stuff that is not necessarily things you think you'd want to do. And I think that's what holds a lot of people back, is we have these expectations of what's acceptable for us to do, and what is expected of us to do. And sometimes that's not necessarily true or helpful. And I think that that prevented me. Oh, okay. Catherine's going to refresh. I'm going to keep talking. But I think
I'm back.
Okay, perfect. That's what I think really held me back for a long time, is this expectation of like, if I'm not actually like in the weeds of the game, am I really a game developer? And like, a producer is a game developer. I feel like that one isn't contested as much as other jobs, but that really held me back for a really long time, is this fear that people would think I'm less than because I wasn't, like a designer or something. Yeah, and that's not true. I'm firmly of the belief that if you are in any way involved in the development of a game, you are a game developer. And I'm extreme in the sense of like, if you're the admin assistant of an office, you are helping that studio run. You're a game developer.
You're feeding the employees.
Game developer.
Yeah,
I think
that,
so.
Honestly,
that's my hot take. But
making the coffee, like Pixar, I know that they credit the coffee person in all of the credits of their movies.
Very important. I have my coffee somewhere. Like, my mom's a game developer. But back to the hobby things. The hobbies that I have, though, I love listening to podcasts, which I guess is a hobby. I just like listening to things unrelated to games to help me gain a better perspective about life and the world. I think that a lot of us have a tendency to be friends with people that have very similar views. And while that's really awesome, it's really important for us to kind of expand those views and become better people. I also try and do some sort of movement, not necessarily as like an exercise thing, but as a just managing the daily stress and just having a time to myself. Like, no one can slack me if I'm on a run. Maybe.
That's the spirit.
Yeah, well, I'm running away from my responsibilities, but it's really good. It helps me have some kind of peace of mind while I'm doing things. And I really encourage people to try and find that thing. I know people that crochet little cat sweaters, like that's their thing. I think that's really awesome. But I think that helps you become a better professional, better person when not everything in your life is 100% your job.
I 100% agree. And like, it's really good to just have those perspectives, even if it ends up not being, directly related to something you do. It's nice to have those outside perspectives, just to understand how things work outside of the game development bubble, and like, understanding where people are getting ideas for certain stories or how things are created and stuff like that in other parts of the world, I guess,
That makes sense. I think that we have a tendency to just stick with what we know, or like stick with the people we know. And of course we love and value the people that we know, but there's more to the world, right? So I'm going to throw a question that we definitely did not prepare. But what are some, I know. So, cause we still got some time to fill and only a couple of questions. So, we've talked about, realizing that you didn't necessarily want to do what you were going to do, and that there are like lots of things and resources and people, whatever, out there. So what are do you have like any resources or like podcasts, books, websites, games, anything that have kind of helped you figure out yourself a little more just on your professional journey?
I talk about Neopets a lot, but I don't give Neopets enough credit.
Yes.
That was probably the first online community I was ever really involved with. So I think that was really important to me in my formative years, because I did end up getting involved in a bunch of other online communities throughout life after that. Actually, I still have a Neopets friend I sometimes keep in touch with.
Oh, that's awesome.
Twitter, which is, I don't even know how we managed to, you're not supposed to talk about other sites on Neopets, so I forget how we managed to connect with each other off of Neopets. But yeah, so like Neopets was a big one. That was the first time like with forums and stuff, and like seeing moderation in action, even when it was a bit extreme at times. Kind of getting my feet wet with that. But the big ones for me were Guns of Icarus Online and Twitch Creative, the very early days of Twitch Creative. I don't stream as much anymore, but back then that was a growing community. It was a lot smaller and tighter knit. And actually, there was one person who was pretty much at the forefront of that community who ended up becoming Twitch Creative's first community manager, which is really cool. Wow. And I think that was the first time I saw someone actually do that as a job. Awesome. And then Guns of Icarus also was another one where I was in a clan for that game, but it was a small enough community where like a lot of people knew each other anyhow, because not a lot of people played that game. But I made some really close friends of mine, many of which are actually working in the industry, some in community management and marketing and stuff, but just kind of across various places as well. So, I mean, having those kinds of connections and stuff and seeing the good that can come with internet communities really drove me to want to keep creating spaces like that online.
Are there any game communities that you would recommend people join?
Ooh, this is a self-plug, but Bear and Breakfast. I love that Discord. They're all so really like pleasant. It's such a pleasant community to run. They all talk about bears. They're so sweet. Blaseball, I honestly have been really fascinated by their community strategy, because like I am not as involved in Blaseball now as I was when it first happened, like started. I feel weird saying started, because I feel like Blaseball is just constantly happening. Right. But yeah, I mean, it was amazing because I felt like their spaces were very surprisingly well moderated, to the point where it kind of just felt like it was self-moderating at times. They did stuff that I would not recommend any community would do, where like creating channels where like anybody could delete each other's posts, so they were bringing down the vibes and stuff. And it's like I would never recommend that to anybody, but like for some reason it never seemed to spiral out of control when I checked it out, and it's just like such a marvel. The game man does a great job with that.
Wow. So are there any like professional
Yes, Work with Indies is also great.
Oh yeah, Work with Indies, yeah.
Yeah, I would totally recommend that one. That's also a very kind and respectful community.
And I'm trying to think. There's also, I think, local ones. You're part of the IGDA NYU chapter group, or am I making that up?
What? You're making that up.
Oh, are you part of there's also local groups too. Are you part of the, yeah.
I've been doing some events with them. I mean, it's kind of hard to say because of COVID and whatnot. But yeah, the local New York City communities are all really nice, and because it's an East Coast game development community, it's a lot tighter knit because it's not as big. We're kind of like everyone knows everyone. It's just there to support each other. And there used to be a meetup that we used to do that like the indie games meetup that we used to do, that was always really, really pleasant and made a lot of friends through that.
Right.
Yeah, what about you, Sarah?
Oh, resources. Okay, so y'all are gonna know that I'm a self-help book junkie. I shouldn't say it that way. That's rude. I love self-help books. And the resources that I like to use, Designing Your Life by the guy that I'm blanking the name on. This book that's actually, I feel like it's geared towards like women in their mid-20s, but I think it can be helpful for everyone. It's called Becoming Superwoman by Nicole Lapin, I think is her name. And regardless of whether or not you kind of share that identity with her, I think she has some really interesting concepts in there for when you're trying to figure out job stuff. And what I really love is that she kind of breaks down her life into different categories and encourages you to examine them and whether or not you're happy with them, and kind of create goals based off of that. And she has this quote that I tell people all the time, that it's just one that I live by, which is, you can have it all, but not at the same time. And that's more in the sense of, I can do the things I want to do. I just can't all do them at the same time, or I will burn out. And that's like her whole thing. It's like overcoming burnout, especially when you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. Because having a job, or even being unemployed, which is, in a way, a full-time job because you're looking for work, is really draining. And so finding a way to balance that can be really difficult. I also encourage, whenever possible, if you can, reaching out to people in your community for just like a 20-minute coffee chat. I know that people have mixed feelings about that one, but just chatting with someone and being really curious about their work can be really helpful. Just because the day-to-day looks very different than what's advertised from time to time. Like, I never would have guessed that as a producer, my entire job is like being in people's DMs all the time, being like, hello, how are things? And I mean, you kind of know it's in the back of your head, but you don't really realize the reality until you're in it. And other resources for people who are kind of like thinking about whether or not they want to transition into different careers. Just finding a good career coach can be really helpful. Some of them can be a bit pricey. Some of them have some like cheaper group events, which is what I wound up doing when I had no money. I was living in Boston, super broke, and I would go to these like big group events and just try and listen to people. Other things too, I think, again, joining different online communities can be really helpful. That's another good way to do like those coffee chats, but not make it as intimidating. But just listening to as many people and listening to as many, experiences as you can be really helpful. I think those are the resources I have. So I do have one last question for you, Catherine. And we kind of touched on this earlier, but I want to kind of touch on this again, which is, what do you recommend for other people who are rediscovering their careers right now? Is there any like parting words of wisdom, some warnings, like signs of like green flags, just anything to kind of help people navigate this part of their lives?
Parting words of wisdom. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Be patient. Be kind with yourself. It's rough out there, especially in games, which is like such a competitive industry, and it will probably take a while. I honestly took me like a year out of college to find work, and that's like really quick. Like, if you like, for games at least, like, so if it takes a while, I would not beat yourself up over it. It's hard, and you are doing the best you can, and I believe in you, and I support you. Good luck.
That's
I love
awesome.
you.
Oh my gosh. I will offer my words of wisdom. They are not nearly as loving as Catherine's. But I don't know. The thing that I like to tell people is success is going to be different for different people. I think coming out of college, I thought if I didn't work AAA, I was not successful. And that is so far from the truth. Success looks different, and it's going to be different, and it's not linear. Your life's going to take you in many different places, and to just be kind of open to different opportunities and keep an open mind and try and refrain from judging yourself and others as much as you can. You were saying that, Catherine, like, just be kind, and recognize that sometimes life is not going to go according to plan. That's really hard for me because I have like a life plan set out. I have a 1, 2, 5, 10, and 20-year plan. And it's not going to work out, and that's okay. And what's kind of exciting is knowing that in a year you might be in a completely different city, doing a completely different job, and that's totally fine.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question, actually. What
you do?
does your plan look like? Because I don't really have a plan. I'm just kind of going with the flow here.
I mean, that's probably valid. So again, I like to follow what Nicole talks about in her book, which is like the 5 F's, and I'm forgetting. It's fun, finance, fitness, which is also like mental health. It's like wellness, I guess. Fun, finance, friends, family. Ooh, I'm blanking. Or I guess one of them is career. But basically, you just like come up with the goals that you have for yourself. So like some of them for me is like get my PMP and my Scrum Master certification might be like a 1 or 2 year goal. Then a 3-year goal might be like, transitioning to a more senior level. I guess at the time that was a 3-year goal. I'm kind of like a couple of years in at this point. Like transition to a senior role, and then maybe become a director, and then maybe like the 10-year plan is be the board on an organization, be on the board of an organization. And then for friends, it might be like, I want to start talking to my friends like at least once a month. And then maybe the 2-year plan is in 2 years, we're going to have brunch club. And it really could be any period of time, but just kind of brainstorming what's possible and being very deliberate about it can be helpful. Because I never would have been like, yeah, what's my 10-year plan for fun? What? And I ask you, what is your 10-year plan for fun? I really encourage everyone to think about that. Like for me, it's like I want to take a really long vacation in a place I've never been in. 10 years hopefully will let me save up for it. But I think I was like become fluent in another language is I think what I did is like within 10 years, try and be fluent in some language. I can't decide which one. That's part of the problem. So
I haven't even thought about like a 10-year plan for anything.
It's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to stress you out. I want to let people know it's not supposed to stress you out. It's supposed to be like, oh, this is really cool. And then what happens is when you write these down and you see someone doing something amazing and you become envious of them, then you can return to your goals and go, are my goals aligned with what they're doing? No, it's not for me. And that's totally fine to admire what they're doing, but it's not the plan I have for myself. And that's kind of helped me feel more secure about who I am because all of my friends are doing such amazing stuff. Like you're doing amazing stuff. I'm just like, oh my God,
thank you. You too.
I want to do it all. But then I look at it. Yeah. And then I'm like, but I'm not a community manager. So maybe not in the cards for me. And that's okay. But it just helps you be a more authentic version. And of course, you can revise these at any time. You don't have to stay by them. And I think she actually talks about how she missed one of her goals or like goal deadlines, I think for like family planning. And so she just moved it a little bit. That was fine. And it's okay. I think you can agile plan your life if you want. I think that's what she does. So
yeah, I think a related question segueing from this, do you think that in your future you're going to stay in production, or is there something you also want to explore in the future?
Oh no. Okay. Again, this is where I feel like producers go through this path and like it's kind of a predictable path. I'm kind of at the point where I'm trying to figure out if I want to stay in production or do more business development related stuff. And I haven't figured it out. I mean, really and truly, I see like 4 options for myself. It's continue production, go into like product management at a tech company, go into internal program management on the corporate side of games, or like go into business development, either at like a nonprofit or like my own company. I don't know. And I don't know yet. And it's terrifying, and I love it. We're having this talk at this time because I'm living it. And I just know that I love certain parts of my job, but I know that those parts that I love couldn't be found at other jobs. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out what's the best fit. And I'm also selfishly taking into consideration where I live, because I live in Madison, Wisconsin. I would not pick that place probably to live just in general. I moved there for work. And so part of my motivation for my next career is where can I go? Thankfully, I feel like most of these roles can be found in other places. So I'm not really limited, but it's just stuff to consider. And what about you? Are you gonna continue being a community manager?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good thing I do want to continue being a CM, because on the topic of my skills being applicable to other things, community management as it exists in games does not really exist the same way outside of games. So thankfully, I really enjoy this job.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We love it. We love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what the future looks like for me. I don't really have a plan for my whole life or anything. Like for me, I just know right now where I'm at. I love the job that I have, the company I work for, the kinds of communities I get to work with, and I just want to be able to keep working with great communities going forward in some kind of like player-facing role like this, you know. So it does feel like it still feels like the right career path for me, and I don't know if my mind's going to change on that someday, but I want to keep riding out the community management wave as long as I can.
We'll check in a couple of years. We'll do this talk again in a couple of years, and we'll see where we've gone. Right? We'll see. But anyway, yeah. Thank you everyone so much for joining us. We do have some time if anyone has questions about what they want to do, if they need more specific resources, we're happy to answer those as well. Thank you again for inviting us to this, Caro. I honestly love everything that y'all do, and it makes me miss Boston so much. One of my life goals and my my 10-year plan is to move back to Boston because I miss everyone
it over there. Much. It's so nice.
So yes, thank you so
much.
What
a great city.
Sarah, we should talk about your idea of being a nonprofit business development. We should talk about that.
I would love to chat. I'm so lost. It's a good lost, but I'm so lost. Okay, let me look at the full screen now. I've just been looking at my face. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, we got that Q&A spot over there.
Ooh.
Oh boy.
Hi.
Hello. Again. Hello.
Hello, friend.
Hello. Oh my gosh, you're back.
Yes.
Oh, green.
I have to say, again, another excellent talk. I love hearing people talk about their careers and the weird wibbly wobbly paths that they take through them. It makes me feel better about having no idea what I'm doing. So that's great. I had mentioned yesterday that I recently had an interview where I felt like people were uncomfortable with the broadness of my skill set, right? And I found it to be kind of challenging to find existing positions at established studios that actually see doing lots of different things as an asset rather than a liability. And I ideally 10-year plan, I'd love to be working at a small indie studio where I can do all the things. And that's not that different from what I'm doing now, but there's a big difference between doing that alone and doing that with other people. And it's hard to get to a position where other people are like, yeah, let's make a game together without having the experience from jobs that are usually more structured and rigid.
Right. Yeah. Super tough. And I'm glad you bring that up. And I think one thing I've noticed, and there's always an exception to this, by the way. So if someone works at a studio and they're like, this isn't the case, there you go. I found that the bigger and more established the studio, the more specialized the roles are going to become. And then the smaller, more indie places are, the more hats you wear. And it's kind of that trade-off you got to do, which I love working at small indie studios because I love doing everything because I'm also kind of a generalist. I do marketing ish. I do outreach decently. I could do project management. I can do some career coaching things, but the moment I get into a more corporate environment, I'm doing my one thing, and that's so tough. I
understand that feeling as someone from the indie space, because I've only really worked on very small teams. Even my first job, I think, was the biggest company I've ever worked for, and even then, my team was only 3 people. So wearing a lot of hats in those kinds of environments is just really, really useful because there's less people who do what you do. And even if there are people who do what you do, it's really helpful, especially on smaller teams, to be able to supplement them in some way with your other skill sets. I love doing a lot of different things, so I understand the desire to find something like that. And it's really fulfilling.
Yes. Well, any other questions? I see someone hovering. Hello.
Oh boy.
Hi there. I'm audible. Good. Still formulating. I have something I want to sort of pitch out there for you guys to chew on. I have
of course.
done a lot of job changing over the last 20 years of my life. A little while back I actually counted it up, and counting jobs, not like necessarily professional jobs, but even like when I was in high school, counting all of the just like sort of jobs that I've had, it's like over 20.
Wow.
That itself I would even say is a piece of advice. If you can work, like especially if you're young, not everyone has like, including myself, not everyone has that still, but if you're young, just work a random fucking, just like do something for a summer and make some money. And just like know, like especially if it's something you know that can end and you'll have an escape from it, just be able to have that experience to say like I've done that, I know what that's about, in something just completely unrelated. Just do it for money. Like
Yeah.
I worked as a stagehand in the theater, super fucking cool. I wouldn't do that as a living, but I learned some things about theater, and like audio and stuff like that, and people in that industry. I also worked as a dock worker, packing lobsters. Don't recommend that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's a very, yeah. Wow. Dang, that's unusual.
But and so yeah, as for professional, so I had a, undergraduate was for me was stuff, liberal arts stuff. I then took some time and did stuff I don't remember, and then I went to law school, and for a couple of years I was a lawyer. I'm no longer a lawyer. And after law school, I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer, and I was a journalist, right? I worked for a newspaper in Biddeford. Or wait, you guys aren't in Maine. Anyway, in southern Maine. So I guess the one thing I've distilled from a lot of this is change what you're doing, but don't be too committed to explaining to yourself why you're doing what you're doing, or explaining to other people around you who care about you and who you care, explain what you're doing. Don't be too committed to explaining that well to them, because every step I've taken, every career change I've done, or job change that I've done, I've felt the need to sort of sell it to myself and explain like, okay, this does feel good, right? Like, oh yeah, I feel like this fits me because. And I've always had a good thing to say after that sentence. But that doesn't mean that thing worked out to be the thing I was going to do forever. It was just good for that moment. And then, it finds a reason to sort of wrap up. Right now, I'm in games, and I do feel really good about it. But what I've learned by this point, especially after spending a lot of tuition money in law school, is the best thing. The thing that I like to say right now is like, this is going well for now. Like, it's going well for now, and I can't commit to it continuing to go well. I hope it does. Here are the reasons why it might, but don't sell it to yourself and don't sell it to other people as like, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next ever, because then you have to sort of get over the thing where it doesn't work out like that, because that's what things do. They don't work out like you think they're going to. That's my personal take on it. Hearing the idea of having a 10-year plan for anything is just like not how my world works.
That's fair. That's fair. That's totally fair. Yeah. It's.
But I can see it makes sense to be able to talk about what your future is. So I can see it in that respect.
Right. Yeah. The way I would think about it too, especially if you're not about that, is the idea that it could totally change. And I think it's just because I'm a goal results oriented person. I think that also kind of comes with the territory of production. So that's totally fair. But I do want to point out one thing that you said that was super interesting. And I don't know, Catherine, if you did that, like working a job that's not like in your field at all. So I was actually an admin assistant at a cancer clinic. I helped, check in patients and run insurance on, people who were cancer patients. I think blood related diseases and stuff. And that was interesting because I learned what it was like to deal with really angry people who are going through a lot of like pain and sadness in their lives, and helped me develop a lot of empathy in spite of, being yelled at. And I have some really fun stories about that time in my life, but since this is a panel, I'm not going to go into it. But I really like that. Yeah. Catherine, did you do something like that as well?
Yeah. So when I was like after, I mean, during college, I did like admin assistant stuff as a work study. So I was working in the arts department, kind of, running things around to professors and copying lots and lots of books. I remember copying a ton of books and filling things into spreadsheets and stuff. I also did admin assistant stuff after college, and actually, I also did a seasonal retail, which is a very difficult
That's
job.
tough.
Everyone, I
Yeah.
firmly believe everybody should work in service at least once, if not just to understand what service industry people go through.
Yes.
But
That
I worked
mood.
seasonal retail in the Target electronics department, and it was very difficult, but you learn a lot about it. Actually ended up being really useful because you learn a lot about like conflict resolution in a very polite and productive sort of way, since like that's a big core part of your job, and especially in community management, where you sometimes have to deal with people who are very difficult and belligerent at times. Like being able to handle those situations with a calm head is so important.
Gosh,
So it
yeah.
ended up being really useful for me.
Yeah, I can't imagine being a community manager. Catherine and I talk about this all the time. The one thing I love about production is I'm dealing with the dev team. Like, I can't deal with gamers. So
I don't know how
admire
you do it, because like, I mean, I'm really good at following up with people and being like, hey, are you getting this thing done? But like, I'm also really nice. So I'm just kind of like, it'd be so weird to just be like, hello, can you please do this thing?
Yeah, you gotta be firm. You gotta be firm. But anyway, thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone
we
else
have time for probably one more?
Yeah, a question. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. And thank you again for hosting us. Fig Talks, Figs Learn. I hope y'all have a great rest of your afternoon. I think there are a couple of more events left, but this is also just such an amazing community. And also join this Discord, this community's Discord if you didn't. I know you didn't mention that. So join it. Y'all are great. We'll talk to you later, and we'll be in the lobby if anyone wants to continue to chat. At least I will. I think Catherine has stuff she might be
I'll
doing.
stick for a little bit.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Okay, bye.